let's talk about Charlie Munger. Now, to most of the world, he's known as Warren Buffett's billionaire right-hand man, right? But behind closed doors, Munger was actually something far more profound. He was a master philosopher who literally engineered an unshakable mental operating system to just decode reality. So today in this explainer, we're tearing down the engine of one of the absolute greatest minds in business history, using his definitive playbook, Poor Charlie's Almanack. We're not here for stock tips. No, we are looking to completely upgrade how you think, decide, and just view the entire world. Let's dive right in.
To a man with only a hammer, every problem looks pretty much like a nail. Have you heard that one? This proverb is the absolute core of Munger's warning to us. He called it the man with a hammer syndrome. You see, the fatal flaw of modern thinking is extreme specialization. Imagine an economist looking at a really complex problem. They only see supply and demand. A psychologist looks at the exact same problem and, well, they only see human behavior. When you've only got one tool in your mental toolbox, you kind of force every single problem in life to fit that one tool. And honestly, that often leads to absolutely disastrous results.
Which leads us to a pretty fascinating question. Why do genuinely smart, highly educated people make absolutely terrible decisions? Like, think about it. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's actually because standard, isolated thinking just shatters when it hits the messy, interconnected reality of the real world. You could have an IQ of 160, but if you're viewing a problem through a single academic lens, you're basically flying blind. So what was Munger's ultimate antidote to this? Well, he called it worldly wisdom. Munger argued that you simply cannot rely on just one subject. You've got to acquire a broad array of skills from the most enduring academic disciplines. Now, you don't need to be a genius, but you absolutely must understand the fundamentals of how the world works across multiple spectrums. This is exactly how we install his cognitive system into our own minds. All right, part 1, the lattice work of mental models. Munger was adamant that isolated facts are basically useless. Instead, you've got to build a connected network, what he called a lattice work of mental models, right in your head. And get this, he didn't use complex computer algorithms to build it. He just used the big ideas from microeconomics, psychology, biology, physics, and history. You don't need a PhD here. Munger estimated you really only need to deeply internalize about 80 to 90 of the biggest models from these fields. Once you stack them together, you create these superior analytical lenses. The reality of our world is interconnected, so, your thinking absolutely must be too. One of Munger's most powerful heavy-lifting mental models is called inversion. He actually drew this from the 19th century German mathematician Carl Jacobi, who famously advised, invert, always invert. Think about it like this. An amateur usually sits around asking, how do I succeed? But a master, using inversion, asks the exact opposite. What will guarantee my failure? If you want a successful life, don't obsess over chasing happiness. Instead, figure out what guarantees misery. Things like crippling debt, addiction, unreliability, and simply avoid those things. Munger actually loved to illustrate this with a famous story about a rustic farmer. The farmer says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. It sounds like a punchline, right? But the underlying wisdom is profound. Avoiding stupidity is far easier and, let's be real, often far more profitable than desperately seeking sheer brilliance. If you systematically eliminate obvious catastrophic errors, you are going to outperform almost everyone. But what happens when multiple models and forces align perfectly? Well, you get Munger's signature concept, the Lollapalooza effect. This is an explosive, non-linear outcome created when 3, 4, or even more psychological biases act in the exact same direction simultaneously. It's wild. This is the secret mechanics behind massive business empires and, honestly, dangerous cults alike. It is literally a critical mass of human behavior. You have to realize that Lollapalooza outcomes are not simple addition. In this scenario, 1 plus 1 does not equal 2. It equals 3 or 10, or maybe even 100. When social proof, authority bias, and extreme incentives hit all at once, the result is exponential. It's exactly how Coca-Cola achieved global domination, and it's also exactly how devastating financial bubbles form. These forces don't just add up, they multiply. Moving on to part 2, the psychology of human misjudgment. To really understand these invisible traps causing us to misjudge reality, we have to look at Munger's legendary Talk 11, starting with what he calls the reward and punishment super response tendency. Let's take FedEx as an example. They had this massive problem. They needed their airplanes loaded at a central hub in the middle of the night, incredibly fast. But the night shift was just painfully slow. They tried moral suasion, they tried threats, it all failed. Why? Because the workers were being paid by the hour. Their absolute incentive was to take as long as possible. The fix? FedEx just switched to shift pay. They said, when the planes I loaded, you can go home. And boom, the problem vanished overnight.
Munger codified this with a really punchy, absolute rule. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. Seriously, never underestimate the extreme power of incentives. If a person or an institution is producing terrible outcomes, don't just automatically assume they're evil or stupid. Look at the incentive structure first. If you want to change human behavior, you absolutely must change the underlying incentives.
Now, these traps often stack on top of each other, which is brilliantly illustrated by the classic Tupperware party. Have you ever wondered why totally rational people go to a neighbor's house and buy $500 worth of plastic bowls they definitely don't need? It's because a Tupperware party weaponizes multiple psychological biases into a sort of mini Lollapalooza effect. You get invited over, you're given free food, which triggers reciprocity. Then you politely state out loud that you like the product, triggering consistency. Then you see all your friends buying, triggering massive social proof. We humans automatically copy the crowd, and suddenly the whole crowd goes mad together. Out of all these traps, the consistency and commitment tendency is arguably the most dangerous for a focused learner. This is your brain's stubborn refusal to change its mind once an opinion has made public. Once you lock into a public statement, changing your mind actually feels biologically painful. A modern thinker has to actively fight this stubbornness. You have to force yourself to seek out disconfirming evidence, and honestly, be ruthless about updating your beliefs when the facts change. Let's jump into part 3, the operational blueprint. Okay, so how do we practically defend against all of this? Interestingly, Munger rarely relied on complex spreadsheets. Instead, he relied on the rigorous use of checklists. Just like a pilot uses a pre-flight routine to systematically eliminate catastrophic errors before takeoff, Munger used a decision-making checklist. Step 1, define the risk. Ask yourself, where can I suffer a permanent loss? Step 2, remain independent. Am I just blindly following the crowd here? Step 3, invert the problem. What guarantees failure in this situation? It is a brilliant, systematic engine for preventing stupidity. And to manage the sheer chaos of incoming opportunities, Munger and Buffett utilized a delightfully simple physical system. They kept 3 literal baskets on their desks to categorize the world: in, out, and too hard. And that third basket, well, that leads directly to Munger's most legendary and perhaps most underutilized cognitive tool: the too hard pile. If a business model, a piece of technology, or even a life problem was wildly complex and impossible to easily understand, Munger didn't agonize over it. He didn't try to stroke his ego and prove his genius by solving it. Nope, he simply chucked it into the too hard pile and moved on. The crucial takeaway for us here? Perfection isn't about struggling to solve impossible problems. It's about ruthlessly avoiding them. Focus your energy strictly on what you actually understand, your true circle of competence. Beyond all the mental models and checklists, Munger's ultimate operating system rested on a really unshakable ethical framework. Integrity plus rationality plus discipline equals long-term success. Munger stressed that honest, reliable behavior isn't just a nice moral choice. It's an extreme economic advantage. It compounds over time, exactly like financial capital. Trust creates opportunities that money alone just cannot buy. At the end of the day, a highly reliable, competent person will eventually crush the brilliant but unreliable genius, for sure. Which brings us to Munger's ultimate philosophy on living. Go to bed smarter than when you woke up. This right here is the undeniable foundation of worldly success. Think about it. Most people just stop learning the day they leave school. But Munger, he read voraciously for his entire 99 years of life. He viewed the human mind as a continuous learning machine, where knowledge, just like money, compounds exponentially over time. Which leaves us with one final provocative question. Look at the way you approach your career, your investments, and just your daily life. Are you actively building your own multidisciplinary latticework of mental models, or are you just walking around holding a specialized hammer, desperately hoping everything looks like a nail? It's time to upgrade your operating system. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.